Immigration is a clear flashpoint. Case in point, meet Zohran Mamdani. He's the brash Democratic socialist who's internet famous for bringing the fight to the Trump immigration czar. Watch this.
How many more New Yorkers will you detain? How many more New Yorkers without charge? Do you believe in the First Amendment? Do you believe in the First Amendment, Tom Homan?
But with that new notoriety, Mamdani is now the target of vicious, vulgar attacks.
Go f yourself, you terrorist. Matter of fact, you're gonna wash my European feet. You filthy f***ing sand. Hey, you f***ing Muslim piece of f***ing shit. I hope a f***ing illegal puts a f***ing bullet in your f***ing head. Get out of my country.
So a lot of this, Zohran, is coming from in the wake of a lot of these arrests that actually have had to do with pro-Palestinian activists and protesters, but also the broader immigration issue has really hit the city hard.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that when a New Yorker who's a permanent legal resident of this country was dragged, disappeared, and detained without charge. And those are the reasons that I asked those questions of Tom Homan, which is at the forefront of many New Yorkers' minds. Do you believe in the First Amendment? What are the charges that you're holding Mahmoud Khalil on? And how many more New Yorkers will you detain? And when I said those things, these are the messages that I received, and it's just a glimpse into what was flooding into my office the day after and the days after. But I'm not intimidated. I shared them to show what happens when a Trump administration that ran on cheaper prices, on lowering the cost of living, and on a message that resonated with New Yorkers on Fordham Road and Hillside Avenue, has instead shown itself completely unable and uninterested in delivering that, and instead is pivoting to the one thing it can do, which is deliver cruelty to its perceived enemies.
I mean, if Trump were doing as he said he would do and focus on the criminals, that would be one thing. But there is also a lot happening where criminals, people who are not criminals, are getting caught up in this, and people who have points of view, perhaps, that are opposed to by this administration are getting caught up too.
Well, I think obviously the vast majority of people that ICE has engaged with are criminals, have either criminal convictions, have orders of detention against them, or orders of deportation. As ICE goes into different communities across the country to engage these folks, they are coming across other individuals. Obviously, there will be instances, unfortunately, where there is either a misidentification or a mistake that is made. But the vast majority of people who have been detained are those who have committed criminal acts either here in the United States or committed crimes in their country of origin before they came here illegally.
Isn't that why due process is important in this conversation? And that's one of the things that the Trump administration is pushing back really hard on. This idea that they can just deport people using a wartime power that is disputed, and they don't have to, say, prove that they are actually in a Venezuelan gang. It could be a soccer player who's here on an asylum claim.
I mean, and this is at the core of what has outraged so many New Yorkers, is that we still don't know the charges for which they have detained Mahmoud Khalil. And what we've seen, in fact, is an inability to prove them because there are no charges. This is an attack on the First Amendment. It's an attack on one of the most core things about being an American, which is the right to engage in political speech without fear that your government is going to lock you up.
Well, I would strongly disagree here. First of all, Mahmoud Khalil came here on a student visa, did ultimately get a green card. But the fact is, you are not entitled to either a visa or a green card. And under the Immigration and Nationality Act, the Secretary of State does have broad power when somebody is engaged in conduct that is perceived to be a threat or has a negative impact on our foreign policy. That is what they are utilizing with respect to Mahmoud Khalil.
What is the conduct?
And the bottom line here is that these protests, by and large, and I went to Colombia at the height of those protests back in April of last year. I've been to Colombia multiple times. I listened to the chants that were being engaged with. And the bottom line is, in many of these instances, these students have been engaged in rhetoric and conduct that has threatened the safety and well-being of Jewish students on campus. They have been engaged in conduct that promotes propaganda put forth by a terrorist organization.
Isn't that speech?
And that is...
But isn't that speech, Congressman?
But I'm sorry.
Isn't protest and
you are here if you are here
rhetorics
on a visa?
I know, but
if you are
but
here
the
on a
question
visa,
is,
you are not
I know, but the
entitled
question
to that
is,
visa.
the question is, what you're describing sounds like speech to me. Is it speech in your view?
Well, you think at the height of these protests that there was not physical violence? You did not hear speech that was
I guess-
actually threatening
Hey, look, I
the
think
physical
that maybe
safety
there
and
was.
well-being?
I think that if there was physical violence, then absolutely that
Right.
should be prosecuted.
And we would-
So
But-
when you're
but-
calling for the eradication of
100%
Jews,
that
you
should
have
be
no
prosecuted.
problem.
But the
That's
question
speech.
is,
this is
okay.
where.
but hold on a second, Jamal, just a second. The question is, have they brought up evidence of that? Has there been physical violence accused here?
No.
And the answer is no.
Well, the
so
process,
I'm wondering.
the process will play itself
and maybe,
out, but the
maybe
Secretary
the
of
argument
State
on
has
your
broad
part
authority
is maybe
under
the
that
argument is
legislation.
Yeah, speech is a means to revoke someone's visa, and if that's the case, the administration should absolutely say so that that can be litigated.
When you are engaged in propaganda on behalf of a terrorist organization, yes, that is
But
a
he's
problem.
not.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Jamal.
Brother Mahmoud Khalil is here legally. He is a student.
Nobody is arguing that.
Okay, so he's here legally, engaging in peaceful protests, and he was detained. We have no idea what the charges are. You don't arrest and then try to throw charges at the wall to figure out what sticks to try to get him deported. Thank God there was resistance and he was not deported. You mentioned the Secretary of State in the broad jurisdiction there, but you used the key word, perceived. If the Secretary of State has an agenda like this administration and they perceive someone to be a threat because they use language that they don't like or understand, they can lock them up and possibly deport them. Free speech is free speech. Brother Khalil did not engage in any crime, did not hurt anyone physically. Free speech is free speech, and it's under attack under this dictatorship. And if you question the agenda of this particular administration, Elon Musk used a Nazi sign at the inauguration. This is what we're dealing with this administration. There's an agenda to support and uphold white supremacy.
Joe?
Just, again, the obsession with Elon Musk. Just to go back to what we talked about last segment. Taking this back to 40,000 feet, this is another 80-20 issue where I think Trump is winning because the sympathy out there for people who on October 8th, the day after October 7th, October 8th, they started in the streets here in New York, and what that amounted to was cheering on the people in Hamas who crossed over the border and murdered babies and women and children in their beds. That's what happened. So spare me because I don't have an ounce of sympathy for anyone who was out there, part of those protests, cheering them on. Goodbye, good riddance. Maybe I'm wrong.
He wasn't
but
cheering
that's it.
them on. You are wrong.
I think,
I think he was
we're all talking about speech versus deporting someone or attempting to deport someone. And I think this will be held in the courts. And I think what you've seen from Donald Trump and the administration is that when it goes to the courts and they don't rule in their favor, they end up attacking the judge. And I think you'll continue to see this. I actually agree with you that I think that the administration believes that this is a big win for them. I think that having these fights in court, they love that. They love the battle to try and showing the images of people being arrested or deported or any of those things. I think they are truly enjoying that. They don't understand the impacts that it's having on our country and the long-term impacts and how people are angry about them. But I do think that this was their plan all along.
And Muslim does. Go ahead, Zoran.
Well, look, I think it's, as you said, it's critical for us to be fighting this dismantling of the First Amendment. And what is so galling is that it's not just a dismantling done by a Republican administration in D.C. It's one that's also being done with the support through the silence of a number of other candidates for mayor, namely disgraced former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who took 72 hours to say even a word. And when he issued that statement, we still didn't know whether he actually opposed the detainment or whether he was calling for the release of Mahmoud Khalil. And this city needs someone to lead it that is willing to fight the Trump administration, not collaborate with it in the manner of Eric Adams or that which Andrew Cuomo is running.
I think what the general public sees is a Democratic Party that is more interested in defending people like Mahmoud Khalil than they are victims of crime here in New York City, than they are Jewish students who have been subjected to vile anti-Semitism across these college campuses and universities, or than they did seeing Democrats refuse to stand for a 13-year-old boy who's suffering from cancer who was made a Secret Service agent. That's what the juxtaposition is right now. That's what the American people are seeing. And they're looking at it and they're going, these people are out of their minds.
Go ahead.
Well, you know what I think also the New Yorkers are seeing is a Jewish student by the name of Grant Minor, who was the president of the United Auto Workers local on Columbia's campus that was just fired by Columbia administration for participating in those same protests. These are students that deserve their rights to be respected. These are ones that deserve to be recognized by those of us who aspire to be leaders across the state.
I got to leave it there, but I just want to point out, I mean, no one is supporting the harassment of Jewish students.
Yes, they are.
No,
No,
Respectfully, yes,
no
they
one
have.
is.
Yes, they have.
What else are you cheering for?
Not
October
Democrat
8th,
Party.
Hang on a
when you're
second.
marching the street.
Hang on a second.
I
Let
have
me-
gone
let
to
me-
these
Let me be
protests. I have
clear.
seen
I'm
them.
talking about here at this table.
Of course not.
Okay?
That's all.
Nobody was
No
talking
one
about
also
it.
knew
No one
by
at this
administration they charged
No one
Hamas
at this
and they
table
protected Jewish
supports
students.
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, except
or
they failed
violence
to move
or anything
forward
like
on
that.
numerous instances
Congressman,
of anti-Semitism
but I
that we
do
saw
think,
all across the
Congressman,
country.
but
and Chuck Schumer
they brought a lot of-
refused
Congressman
moving
and
forward with the
Sochi.
Anti-Semitism Awareness Act.
Just give me a
Refused
second
8
here.
months.
The other thing that I want to point out here is that if the Trump administration is making speech, public or private, a means for deportation, they should make that case in court. That is all. That is the only question.
is where the
I think
case-
that is
Secretary
at-
has
is in
broad
court right now.
power under
That-
the Immigration and
I think
Nationality
that's-
Act. That is what they
I
are
think that's
utilizing.
fine. I think that's fine if that is the
That is
theory.
what they are utilizing.
They got to bring it to court, and the courts will decide whether that is appropriate in this country. State Representative Zoran Mamdani, as you can tell, he's running for mayor of New York City. Thank you very much.